Hey guys, what's up? How are you doing? In this session, we will discuss about interview questions on aggregation task or aggregation process. So what kind of questions you can expect or how to answer, right? So these are the some of the questions which I've seen in the interviews. More than interviews, if you take about the concept as well, what is aggregation? Uh, What are different type of aggregation tasks? So what are the major options in aggregation task? Out of those options, partitioning is very important. And why do you need the partition? And difference between account and group aggregation task. So what is aggregation task? Aggregation is process of reading data from target application into SailPoint. Simple. So you work on application onboarding, that is to establish the connection between SailPoint and target application, or it can be HR application as well. Whatever, end of the day, it's a business application, right? So once the connection is established, you have to read the data from the application. So how do you read that? So whenever you create an application, what do you do next? You go to setup, tasks, then you click on new task, account aggregation. There you are going to create a new account aggregation task for your application. So you select the application, it will display the application for you, so you can create the task and then you can run the aggregation task. So if you go here, save means just it will save the task, save and execute. Yeah, it will run the task. Okay, so this is aggregation. Next, what are different type of aggregations? So basically there are two type of aggregations in SailPoint. One is account aggregation, second one is account group aggregation task. So account aggregation task are simply aggregation task. It is used to read the data, user data from application, also called as accounts. So the objects that will be created in SailPoint when you run the aggregation or account aggregation is referred as accounts, right? Technically it is called as link object. Business terminology account, technical terminology link object, right? So the other one, account group aggregation task, is used to aggregate all the groups or entitlements or whatever it may be, the access you have in your application, target application. So the account group aggregation task is not relevant to HR application. HR application, you will not have groups at all. 99% you will not have. Rarely you will see in the latest trends, you might see some group kind of stuff in HR application as well. But it's better to create that HR application as a target application. Okay, that's a different story completely. So, but yeah, most of the times you will have account group aggregation task, also known as entitlements aggregation task, for your target applications, right? So that will use to read groups or permissions or what kind of whatever may be the access you have in target applications, you can aggregate them. So how do you create this account group aggregation task? So similarly, go to setup, tasks. I didn't save that task. New task, you see account group aggregation task. So it's almost same as account aggregation task, but less options. And if you see select application to scan, it will not display all the applications. Not every connector supports account group aggregation. So you need to find it out. You can check the connector documentation and find it out whether the the group management, I mean account group aggregation is supported or not. Okay, so what are the differences between an account aggregation task and account group aggregation task? So basically account aggregation task is used for aggregating the user data, also called as accounts. Account group is used to aggregate groups. It can be anything. Group means not like a group. If you take Active Directory, the entitlement is group. That's not what we mean group here. Okay, so any kind of access you have in target applications that we can read if connector supports. You need to find it out. You can find it out in the connector documentation. So by default, if the connector supports, then only you can see under entitlement aggregation task. Not every application is, or not every connector is supported for account group aggregation. Okay, the next difference is, so when you run the account aggregation task, maybe if I go back, setup task, new task, or let's open existing task. So whenever you run the account aggregation task, there is an attribute called promote managed attributes. Okay, so how do you mark an attribute as an entitlement? You go to account schema and you mark as managed attribute, right? So how do you mark an attribute as an entitlement? You just click edit on the account schema and you select managed entitlement. Okay, so whatever the attribute that is selected as managed entitlement, and if you enable this option promote managed attributes, then the attribute will be promoted as entitlement, and you can see them under application entitlement catalog. You will find it here as an entitlement for all the values associated with that attribute and the user or account, what I mean. Okay, so let's say that you have employees in your company is there in 10 locations in the world, 10 countries, but you have employees in 4 countries only. So when you mark this location as a managed attribute, and if you enable promote managed attributes option here, then when you run the account aggregation task, those location values will be promoted as entitlements and it will be displayed here under entitlement catalog. And you can use these entitlements for requesting access or building the roles, IT roles. Okay, but uh, what about the remaining 6 locations where employees are not there? Those values you will not get it. So you get the entitlements associated with the user accounts only. Other 6 locations you don't get them. Whereas when you run the account group aggregation task, you get all of them into SailPoint, irrespective of whether the user is added to that location or not. I mean, the remaining 6 also will be there. So just like how you are reading all users, account a group aggregation task will read all the groups from the application. Along with that, when you run the account aggregation task, it just gets the bare value. So you get location, let's say India, USA, Germany, Netherlands, like that. It doesn't have any other data. Let's say, for example, location is India, but what is the address of the office? You will not find it out. If there are any additional attributes for your entitlement attribute, consider it like an object. Okay, so attribute name, attribute display name, description will be there. So for an entitlement, you will have entitlement name, entitlement description, entitlement value. Some properties will be there. So if you want to read all the properties of your group object, permission object, or access object in your target application, then you will depend on account group aggregation task. That's the primary difference between account aggregation task and account group aggregation task. So now if let's look into some options here in the aggregation task. So name of the task, you know that. Description, yes, you can have any description for that. Previous result action. So whenever you run the account aggregation task or any task, the result will be there right here. So when you run the task, the results will be here. And when you run the next time the same task, the previous result action, you want it to be delete or you want to rename. Okay, so we don't use cancel, that doesn't make any sense. So rename, delete means the old result will be deleted and you will have the current execution. Rename new means the old one will be JDBC test1 aggregation task will be there, and once you run this task again, it will be -1 will be appended to this. Rename old means the old one will be renamed to -1. and the current one will be just JDBC test1 aggregation task. Again, if you run, the old one will become -2 and the current one will be JDBC aggregation. Like this, the increments will go on. So for example, if you look into my system, HR app aggregation task, see, the old ones are renamed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Whereas the new one, it doesn't have any number. Because if I go back to my HR app aggregation task, so what is the action I have selected here? Rename old. This is the best, or this is the recommended way. So if you select delete, the old one will be deleted. Only one result will be there always, which is HR app 1 aggregation task. But that is not a good strategy. Not a good practice, because you should have results from uh, I mean, the history of executions you should have. It is useful a lot for the data analysis, and in case if there are any failures, you will come to know what are all times or what are all dates it was failed. There will be a pattern. Let's say that the task got failed, when it was failed, what are all days it was failed, what are the errors, and if it is failing, let's say every Saturday it is failing, there is a pattern, right? You might think about it. So, and for the other attributes, for example, average runtime, and if you see number of runs 17 times this task was executed, I don't have 17 times, I have only 11 times remaining, I might have deleted them. Okay, so you see the number of runs and average runtime. In case if you do not have old results, you cannot have average runtime. So you will miss this kind of statistics. So if I go back to my task result, let's say here, when you execute the task, you see the name of the task, and the type of the task is of course account aggregation. Description looks like I don't have any description. Runtime, how much time it took. Okay, started by who started this, when it started, when it was completed. Then it will give you average runtime. If you do not have old results, you cannot have average runtime. And runtime change, in case let's say last time it took, our average time it will take 10 minutes, for example. Today it took 15 minutes. What is the runtime change percentage? It increased by 50%. It was 10, now 15. How much increased? 5. So 50% increased. You will see that. Host means which server this task was executed. Okay. Status, whether it is running or warning or failed, success, progress, completed or not. And you see all the data about your account aggregation task. Okay, so if you delete the old records, I mean old execution or old task results, you will not have statistics like this number of average runtime. Number of runs will be there, that's no big deal. As many times you execute, it will be there. But average runtime, you will not have it. So, and the statistics here, you will not have it. Let's say that you are deleting the old result and you never know what is the average runtime for this task. In case if it takes more, let's say every day it is taking 1 hour and suddenly it is taking 2 hours, even you really don't know. It's not like it will jump directly from 1 hour to 2 hours. It might slightly changing. Let's say 1 hour, 1 hour 10 minutes, 1 hour 20 minutes, like that. And if you are keep deleting the task, you might not observe that changes even. It will not help you, trust me. Okay, and runtime change also, you will not be able to see it. Whenever you are troubleshooting, we will depend on a lot of data, so do not go for deletion. Okay, allow concurrency. I'm not sure about it. I didn't read about it. Even if you want, you can look into the document. Require sign off. I don't think it is required. Even we never used it. Host. Say whenever you create the aggregation task. Okay. So by default, you will have two. I mean, let's say that if you have one server. So I'm not talking about non-prod environments or lower environments like dev, SIT, UAT. I'm talking about production. Okay. So in production, definitely we will have at least 2 servers or 4 servers. right? So I recommend you to have 4 servers in production. So when you have 4 servers, so you will set them as 2 UI servers and 2 task servers. Okay, so those 2 task servers will be used for any task execution, right? So if you do not give any host, by default it will use least busy algorithm. Whichever server is less busy, that will be used for this running this aggregation task. Okay, so if you take a step back, once an aggregation task is created, you can schedule the task. How? Go to task, right click on your task, you get schedule. Okay, so give the task name, give the description, and when you want first execution to be run now, it means that immediately it will run. Or first execution, it will take some time. Okay, then execution frequency, monthly or once, hourly, daily, like that you can select. And host, you do not need to give the host. Host means IP address or server name of your Apache Tomcat. Okay, in case if you give the host, the task will run only in that server. If you do not give the host name, it will run in any of the available task servers. By default, most of the world, as far as I have seen, production they'll have 4 servers, 2 UI servers, 2 task servers. So it will take this less busy server, and we are setting it up, right? Which servers are task servers. So SailPoint intelligence algorithm will identify that. Even I'm not sure how it will work. We will not come to know that, right? So it will identify which server is less busy because it has statistics. What all tasks are running on which server. If you go to global settings, administrator console, gear icon, administrator console, you see under environment, you see the host. It will have all the statistics. What are all your database servers, your Tomcat servers, what is the CPU percentage, whether status is up or not, memory percentage, everything it will have. So SailPoint knows your infrastructure. So it will identify which server is less occupied, and that server will be used for executing this task. Okay, in case if you give the host, doesn't matter even if that server is busy, it will be executed in that server only. Example, in case if you are running uh, aggregation on a delimited file, so you won't be placing a delimited file in 4 servers, right? I mean, let's take 2 servers here, task servers. No, we will not place in 2 task servers, we will place in 1 server only. So you need to hard code that server name here. Okay, next, reset run statistics. So if you want to reset all the statistics that has been executed so far, if I click reset, it will be gone. See, it's 0 completely. Okay, next, email task results. So whenever this task is executed, do you want to send an email out of the box? So disabled means I'm not sending any emails. Warning, whenever there is a warning, when this task gets executed, whether you run manually or when this task is scheduled, right? So why do you schedule the task? Because we don't want to run this task every day manually. We want this task to be executed automatically every day, same time. See, in the IT world, if you are doing the same task again and again repetitively, we will not do that manually. We will automate it. That's the purpose of IT, right? We automate the stuff, right? So aggregation has to run every day, so definitely you have to schedule it. So then you will definitely not see every task results, right? What is happening. So maybe you will not check immediately once the task execution is completed. You should know what is happening immediately. So once this task execution is completed, it will send an email notification. Okay. If it is disabled, it won't send. Warning, if there is a warning. So you will select the template here, which email template to use, and email recipients who should all get the email. You can select the identities or a work group which will have that a DL, I mean group or a team email will be there. No, we call DL, distribution list. So entire team will be notified. So we can send email to uh, SailPoint admin team, plus we can send email to application team as well. So that we will be notified about the warning. Okay, next is error failure. If it completely fails, always, doesn't matter what happens, whether it's succeeded or failed or warning, every time there is a result, once it is completed, an email should be sent. So what is the recommendation? I would go for failure only, not for always, definitely. And if you ask me, do I do that? No, actually I will not enable this even. Why? There will be plenty of applications in an organization. Let's say 10, 20, 30, hundreds or 200s, or even some organization might have thousands of applications. So you will have hundreds of aggregation tasks. Let's say an average 100 applications. So you have 100 aggregation tasks. So whenever there is a failure, you get a mail for each and every task. Let's say an average 10 application fails, you get 10 emails. It's not easy to check those 10 emails, right? Instead, what we do now, we create a custom health check task that will read the aggregation task results, and it will identify which is failure, which is not failed, like that. So instead of sending individual emails, we would like to consolidate them and send a single email. Instead of customization to build a health check task, you can go for so instead of this custom health check task where you need to write some a generic rule and run it as a run rule task, you can go for a plugin. I've seen some guys developed some third party, not SailPoint, third party developed a plugin. So you can use that plugin as well for health check, but I'm not fan of plugins. It's a lot of performance issues you will get. I don't like plugins. I would like to build simple customizations. Anyway, it's up to you. Next, select application to scan. You know that. So, see, most of the places SailPoint will give you help icons. You can run. You can read from there. So, optionally select a rule to assign capabilities to perform other processing on new identities. So you will have this rule if you wanna execute whenever this uh, you know aggregation is running. The type of the rule is identity creation. So whenever there is a new identity is getting created, then this rule will execute, but I haven't seen much requirements, ignore them. So the main option here you see is only create links if they can be correlated to an existing identity. So as the name indicates, only create links if they can be correlated to an existing identity means it's a target application. If you enable this option, it will just create a link that will be correlated to identity. Link is nothing but account object. If you do not enable this option, it will create identities, nothing but HR application. This is the very important option out of all options. So only create links if they can be correlated to an existing identity. So the question is, how do you create identities? What makes an application is a HR application? When you do not select this option, then identity will be created. If you enable this option, only links will be created. For HR application, you will not enable this option. For target applications, you will enable this. So next is check active policies. So this is if you want to check the policies to get to see the policy violations. So these are like detective policy violations. If you want to run that, enable delta aggregation is very another important option in case if your application or I mean your connector supports delta aggregation, you can enable that. Next important option is detect deleted accounts. Okay, so if you read this, so let's say that application side there are accounts deleted. Okay, so now when you enable this option, In the task results, it will show you how many accounts are deleted. See, SailPoint IQ, when you are any IZA tool, when you onboard an application, the deletion should happen through this IZA product. They should not delete at the application side. They should not take. See, what is the purpose of onboarding an application to SailPoint or any IZA tool? We manage these operations, CRUD operations or JML. We create the data, we read the data, we modify them, we delete them. They should not do that. It's our job. If they are doing, we can detect them. And maximum deleted accounts. So it's like a threshold. In case if there are more than 100 deleted accounts, maybe by mistake they deleted, we will not continue the aggregation. It will throw a warning that dude, I cannot delete more than this 100 accounts at our sale point. It will fail. The aggregation will stop, display the warning status, and it will not delete any accounts. Next is disable optimization of unchanged accounts. This is very important option. So by default, when you run the account aggregation task, it will read accounts which are changed only. Okay, so unchanged means the accounts did not change, so it will optimize it. So the aggregation that will run is optimized aggregation. If you want to run full aggregation, it is important in correlation. In case if your correlation configuration is modified, until unless you enable this option, the new correlation configuration will not be executed. Or even if you are manually correlated, those will not be moved at all. You need this option. But it's very less used. Promote managed attributes. This is highly important, not in HR applications, but in target application. Next is enable partitioning. I haven't seen much uses because why do you need partitioning? See, whenever you are running an aggregation task, it will read uh, accounts from the application one by one, sequentially. Let's say you have 10,000 records. So your aggregation task is running. At the same time, some other tasks also will be running. Okay, once this task is completed, next other task will be considered for the execution. Okay, so now you don't want to run one single account aggregation task to read 10,000 identity accounts one by one. Instead, you can go for enable partitioning and then how many objects per partition. Let's say if you say 100 here, by default 100 subtasks will be created. All the subtasks will be executed same time. Okay, so if you wanna reduce the time consumption for the aggregation task, it will create a parallel sub aggregation task that will take entire utilization. Terminate when maximum number of errors is exceeded. In case if you are having a lot of errors while aggregating and maybe something is wrong, you do not want to continue the aggregation. So then you can terminate and you can specify how many errors, maximum errors, number of errors to tolerate before terminating the task. In case if if the connection is not established, of course it cannot run. But if there is a problem with the data, okay. So finally, if you wanna include actions to be included as part of your task results, and refresh assigned and detected roles. So user will have the roles right already, either it's a detected roles or assigned roles. If there are any changes at the roles, if the roles should be re-executed for these users, the conditions or whatever the changes are applied. Let's say you have added additional entitlement to the roles, and if you want those to be applied to the identities, then we will select this option. Okay, so to summarize, the important options are here. Host, which is very important. How do you run a account aggregation task or even account group aggregation task in a particular server? Then this is important. Email notification. The question is in how can I send a email notification when there is a task failed or succeeded or warning. Next, how how can I create identities? How can I stop creating identities but just create accounts only? Then this is the important option. Only create links if they can be correlated to existing identity. So how can I execute the policy violations? Detective policy violations. Let's check active policies. If I did changes in my roles, that role should be uh, applied those changes. The role changes should be applied to the identities. Well, how? Then you should go to refresh, assign, and detected roles. Next, if you wanna re-evaluate the correlation configurations, and in case if you have manually correlated identities, I mean accounts to the identities, then you should go for disable optimization of unchanged accounts. So if you correlate any account manually to identity, that will never be moved, doesn't matter even if you change the conditions, until unless if you run this option. Okay, next, delta aggregation. Yeah, it's a good one if you have supported in the connector. By default, it is used in Active Directory. Promote managed attributes. You use this for all target applications. So how can I create entitlements? Promote managed attributes. Okay. Partitioning is very important in case if you have lot of objects. I mean lot of users in your target application. And what are the results you want to include in the task results, and terminate when number of errors are exceeded. These are the important options in account aggregation task. Now, if I go back to account group aggregation task, the same options are here. You can schedule the account group aggregation task as well, and you can run as per your requirements. Here also the same stuff. These options are same. Select applications to scan is same. Next, enable delta aggregation if it supports. Detect deleted account groups, you can understand that. Next, partitioning, you can understand that. Terminate errors, same. Group aggregation refresh rule. So whenever this group is I mean account group is getting executed, if you wanna what I can say, set some data to the groups. Let's say if you wanna set some owner, or if you wanna mark it as requestable by default, you can use this group aggregation refresh rule. See, by default, whenever you are running the group aggregation task, you get all the entitlements, and you might not get description from the target application. But if you wanna set it, but definitely owner, you will not get it, right? Who is the owner of this entitlement? In case if you wanna set it, you can set it. If you wanna mark which is requestable, which is not requestable, by default everything is requestable, right? So if you wanna control that. Next, filter objects types to scan. See, in an application, you will have different type of groups. For example, uh, role will be there, permission will be there, queues will be there. It's not just one access, there will be more than one access. And which one you would like to aggregate? You do not need to aggregate all of them. We will not use all of them. If you take Salesforce, there are different type of access related objects. For example, permission set is there, roles will be there, public groups will be there, and queues will be there. We will not handle queues through SailPoint. So what they do at Salesforce side, they will handle queues through the public groups. So SailPoint will add users to the public groups. Public group definition at Salesforce contains the queues. So by default, user will get the queues associated with the public groups. So what did you understand? We will not handle the queues at all here. So we do not need to aggregate them. So you can filter what kind of objects if you wanna aggregate. You do not need to aggregate all the objects by default, all access objects. Those are the conditions or options you have in account group aggregation task. So what do you use here? Of course, you select the application. If you wanna filter what type of objects, access objects you want to, or group objects you want to aggregate, and then we go for rule, group aggregation refresh rule. These are the mostly used options. So what is aggregation? It's a process of reading data from target application into SailPoint. Different type of aggregations: account aggregation and account group aggregation tasks. Some major options: only create links if they can be correlated to an existing identity. That's the highly required option. That's what controls whether you are going to create just accounts or it is going to create identities as well. Okay, so if you enable that option, then only it will create accounts. You should not forget about it. If you do not enable, it will create identities. You will do only for HR applications. Okay, you should not forget that. Only create links if they can be correlated to existing identity. Okay, and next is some major options uh, apart from this. Um, Promote managed attributes in terms of target applications. Okay, other options did disable optimization of unchanged accounts. When you are dealing with correlation stuff, you need that. Partitioning: if you have a lot of data in your target application, if you don't want to wait a lot of time so that it will read each and every record one by one, instead you can create number of parallel tasks so that you can reduce the time of execution. So you will create, it will create number of parallel subtasks. So how will you do? You need to enable partitioning. You can give the number of objects per partition. It will calculate automatically and it will create the partitions or it will create that subtask. So difference between account and group aggregation task. So account aggregation task is to read the accounts or user data in application, whereas account group aggregation task is used to read the group objects from application. User data object, which is also called as account. Account group aggregation task is used for reading group objects. Okay, so now another difference is in account aggregation task, you will have an option promote managed attributes that will create entitlements only for the users associated with that entitlements. If there is no user in that particular entitlement, we will not be able to get them. Example, location. If your organization has 10 locations, but only in 4 or 5 locations employees are there. So if you depend on account aggregation task, then only 5 entitlements you will get into SailPoint. Remaining 5 you will not get it. In case if your connector supports account group aggregation task, then you will get all the 10 locations, all the 10 entitlement values, irrespective of whether any user associated with that entitlement or not. Okay, so now the question here is, let's say that account group aggregation task is not supported by the connector, then how will you get all the entitlements into SailPoint? Simple, we used to ask them like, hey, can you add a test user to all the 10 entitlements? So that once we run the aggregation, we will get them. After that, you can remove as well, because SailPoint will not delete the entitlements from SailPoint. Okay, that's about aggregation. These are the mostly asked questions. If you know all these concepts, you can answer any question, or even if they ask a scenario, the answers are based on these core concepts only. Thank you. See you in a different session.